Hey yo guys, I'm back here to talk about some pretty big fucking news as Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, and more likely down the line, a bunch of his friends like, Jimmy Hart, Ed Leslie, aka Brutus Beefcake, and the Nasty Boys are, those are more likely, but the for sure stuff is that Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff have signed with TNA Wrestling, and, this is a big thing, as, I'm not gonna sugarcoat and say, oh, this is not that big, blah, 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 blah. But when you look back in hindsight, I'm surprised. I was surprised as soon as I found out the news, but I'm really not that surprised anymore after I had time to absorb it. It's not really that surprising. As look, TNA this a month ago, I believe they announced what they were doing a tour of Australia in 2010. Hulk Hogan then says, "I'm gonna start up a promotion, and we're doing a show in Australia." Connection right there. And I think that's a big one where they're like, look, hey, we're going to be in Australia at the same time. Let's get something going here. Let's get the ball rolling on some deals. Another thing that, that's just the one thing right there that, gets me going. Now, Hogan being in TNA, this is going to be a big thing. It's obviously for the short-term goals, it's going to get TNA a lot more publicity. Hell, right now they're like a number 8 trending topic on Twitter, on bigger than the NBA, which, its season kicks off today as well. So anyways, it's going to be big, it's going to help, ratings for sure for the first couple of times he shows up. Obviously, when he debuts in 2 weeks' time on TNA television, it's going to be huge. And, for the first pay-per-view shows on, it's probably going to be the biggest buy rate that TNA Wrestling has ever done. So that's a big thing. But the way I see it, depends how they use Hogan. Like, you can't do it the same way WCW did it. Like, if you remember when Hulk Hogan debuted in 1994, it was hot for a while. But it was just the same bullshit that the WWF was doing with Hulk Hogan in the 80s, and fans got tired of it, and WCW's popularity, I wouldn't say dipped to, record lows, but it dwindled when you had the likes of Hogan, and even Savage at that point as well, which was a pretty big thing as well. So they're going to have to be careful of how they use that. Do I think Hogan's going to work all that much? More on the bigger shows. I don't think you're going to see Hogan on every pay-per-view. And I think he's only going to really work with, the established guys, like a rematch with Kurt Angle. Who else is there really? A match with Nash, to say who was the true star of the NWO. Just stuff like that. That's the one thing I see going there. Like I said, one of the bigger benefits is because, Hogan has had this agreement with Flair, is that there's a potential that Ric Flair could come into TNA, and that's one of the bigger things that TNA and themselves have been looking at as well. Obviously, Hogan's the biggest signing in this company's history, but Flair would be a pretty big signing in their own right. But I don't know, because we know Flair has a big loyalty to the WWE ever since WrestleMania 24, and he really, like when he was doing that stuff with Ring of Honor this year, he decided, WWE told me they don't want me there anymore, and he, gave them a blessing and stuff like that. Now, with Bischoff coming in, now do I think Bischoff being in to TNA is a benefit? Yes, because an aspect that he's being used in is more television, and Bischoff helped basically create the wrestling war, the Monday Night Wars and stuff that we got in the 90s. He helped revolutionize how we see it, with TNT and stuff like that. And right now he's working on getting TNA more deals outside of the United States, and plus with Bischoff there, I think we're going to see more TNA programming on Spike. So that's a pretty big thing in its own right. Other than that, I really don't have that much to say. It just depends how they use them. I mean, TNA right now is a very interesting company to be looking at. They've made a lot of changes, some negative, some positive. They've been catering to the smart mark audience, but now they're catering to the massive audience, the casual fan audience. And I think this will help for a definite short-term goal. I think in 6 months amount of time, we need to see how it goes. If nothing changes like in TNA, which has happened in the past, only short-term changes have happened, and sometimes big stuff doesn't happen. Will Hogan even be there? That's the one thing I really want to keep looking at. But Hogan will be doing a lot of publicity stuff. He's going to be on Larry King today. He's going to be on Jimmy Kimmel tomorrow night. But it's more to be plugging his book, and let's see if he even talks about TNA, because if he doesn't talk about TNA, that sends a bad sign to me. Like, look, you just, getting back in the ring, you can just tell people that and stuff, and tell them where you're going to be and stuff like that. So, anyways, that's really about it. With the thing that only, I guess I should say, there is some worry with Hogan being there. Like, there's the positive in the business aspect, but there's a worry with me and Hogan in the creative aspect. It's because it's more than likely Hogan and Bischoff, they're going to take over the book. Let's face it, Hogan and Bischoff are taking over this book. Russo's going to be, kind of phased out more slowly than quickly, but he's going to be phased out. And the thing that, worries me is just Hogan running roughshod, It's just, well, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to do it my way. And that's the one thing we can't have happen there. TNA seems to be getting, one of the few companies that doesn't have that many political issues, and I don't want to see them turn into a WCW. Or even a WWE, I don't want to see that. I mean, right now, TNA with Hogan, it's more potential for the business, so I don't want to see that. But yeah, I mean, Russo's more than likely going to be done. And, the thing with the interaction is Hogan going to be working with Russo, I should say. I don't really think so. It's going to be Russo, you play in your pool. Hogan, I'll play in my pool. And that's how I see it going there. And I think Russo's more going to be phased out because Hogan has a big beef with him. And Hogan's obviously going to have more power than anyone in the history of TNA Wrestling. So, he's going to be like, Dixie, I don't want to do this. And it's okay. We're going to do it this way. The one thing, though, it is pretty amazing, I guess, when you look back. Like I said, I was shocked, but I wasn't too shocked. But, the shocking aspects of it are, like, look, Hogan was going to come into TNA back in, 2003, 2004, that time frame. And, of course, they shot the angle where, Jeff Jarrett attacked him in Japan. But, Hogan apparently didn't want to do a job to Jarrett and stuff, and that basically put the kaputs on that deal. And, they were setting up a time slot with him, a big pay-per-view match with Jarrett versus Hogan for the NWA belt. It's a belt Hogan never won. So they were going to do that. And that's big publicity for not only TNA, but the National Wrestling Alliance as well. And Hogan didn't want to do it, so that put the kaputs on that. So really, that's just the one thing in there. I believe this is more than likely the deal is done, unlike the last time where he didn't sign paper to pen. But, let's just see how this plays out in the long run. That's the shocking aspect to me, that stuff actually did happen. And the fact that, he was always more than likely going to go to, WWE with all this stuff. So that's just the one thing. And WWE is right now not that interested in the Hulk Hogan. So, I mean, that's the one thing with Hogan. He's always been in talks with TNA, ever since he left WWE's, basically since 2005. He'd always been in talks with them again. TNA would have, of course, loved to bring him in and stuff, but he'd always been like, well, I can get more money in WWE, but now WWE's not that interested in him. He's going through that big divorce. He's going to have to pay for, he's paying for the Graziano injury stuff. He needs this. And TNA is going to give him a bunch of money and stuff. And, there's always two sides of the coin. I think I made those points clear in this video that, there's the positive in the business side. There's the big worry I have in the creative side. Like, I think he's mainly going to work with the old timers. I remember if I've said that here, but I believe that he's only mainly what Nash, Angle, Sting probably. If they can, they'll probably get Sting back just for that, but we'll see. And that's just the one thing that other scares me. It's like they have all this young, great talent, but it's going to get jobbed out or not even get focused on. They bring Nigel McGuinness in, and Nigel's like the talk of the company, and then that just over. So I've rambled on enough about this. That's really going to be it. I guess I can make quick mention here is, of course, the UFC had a pretty big shocking deal happen as well in their own right, as the main event of the UFC 106 show got canned, as Brock Lesnar right now has a severe flu and has not been able to train, so the UFC decided to can that. And, the main event now is Tito Ortiz versus Forrest Griffin, which, for the UFC for this show, they're not really in a big of a hole as they could have been, losing Lesnar like, they did in 98. Machida and Evans didn't really capitalize on what, 98 could have been. But, Tito and Forrest, I think, will draw pretty strong pay-per-view buy rates, like, definitely for sure, maybe over 650,000 or more, I definitely am saying. Probably 750,000. I think that's a more accurate depiction of what the pay-per-view buy rate will be. But, this sucks for the time being as, UFC comes off a controversial decision in the Shogun Machida match, which I'm still baffled on. And now they lose that, but 2010 looks pretty fucking big. You know, that's gonna listen. The rematch is looking to be, or the match is looking to be scheduled for the January 2 New Year's Day Eve or Day-ish show, January 2. As well, there's what Machado and Thiago Silva. They're looking to set up the Shogun Machida rematch at this point and stuff. So basically, from the beginning of 2010 to about April, that's gonna be pretty big stuff. So you know, keep a look at it. Just what a crazy week, I guess. You know, wrestling's getting a little more interesting. I guess you could say, you know, with Hogan coming over, that makes it a lot more interesting. But and you know all the stuff that's going on in UFC. So yeah. Anyways, that's really gonna be it for me. I'm out. Peace.